2012, there was only one presidential candidate who predicted the economic collapse, who has never voted to raise your taxes, and who will bring our troops home. He has been right for decades.
This is not the kind of government that was designed by our founders of the country. It's not what was written in the Constitution. We've only had an income tax since 1913. But if you want a welfare state, and if you want to police the world and pay for the defense of Japan and Germany, send foreign aid to the Soviet Union, you not only need the income tax, you need the Federal Reserve to print up the money when the deficit is accumulated. So we think the government should be much smaller.
During the next decade, the American people will become poorer and less free, while they become more dependent on the government for economic security.
This country is in the middle of a recession for a lot of people. Michigan knows about it. Poor people know about it. The middle class knows about it. Wall Street doesn't know about it. Washington, D.C. doesn't know about it. But it's because of the monetary system and the excessive spending.
It's no joke. He is America's last true statesman, and he has actually been saying the same thing for the past 30 years about what our federal government needs to do to serve the people. That is, namely, follow the Constitution.
The Federal Reserve credit created during the last 8 months has not stimulated economic growth in technology or the industrial section. But a lot of it ended up in the expanding real estate bubble. This too will burst, as all bubbles do.
How could it be that you knew this on the banking committee in 2003 and nobody else did until after the collapse?
It really says a lot that the politically aware people in the military, those that are paying attention and engaged in the political process, are supporting someone who advocates an immediate withdrawal.
Our campaign got more money from the troops than all the other candidates put together.
I'm a Marine Corps veteran, and I wanted to tell you why I support Ron Paul for president. It means a lot to me as a veteran to know that he's served his country in uniform and made the sacrifices that other veterans have made in the past.
My name is Eric Knowles. I'm an Air Force veteran.
My name is Jonathan Schaefer. I spent 6 years in the Navy.
Hello, my name is Tony Marek. I served in the Army for 8 years.
I'm Al Schlegel. I'm an 8-year Air Force veteran. Hi, my name is John Jones, and I'm a U.S. Air Force veteran. There's great reason to have hope for Ron Paul's candidacy, as he's the only veteran in the Republican primary right now, the only representative in Congress that takes his oath to the Constitution and the rule of law seriously.
You sign up for the military, and you sign the dotted line. You're there to defend America and the Constitution, and Ron Paul is the only person that's been doing that for a while now.
I support Ron Paul because I believe he's the only candidate with the fortitude to actually stand by the Constitution.
I took an oath to support and defend the Constitution, and he is the only elected representative that actually takes his oath seriously. I think he's dead on when he talks about the Federal Reserve System. It's only because the government is able to print money to pay for the war that we're able to stay at war. And that act of printing money makes us all poor.
It means a lot to go out and defend our country and make those sacrifices, and it's not something that should be taken lightly. We only have those rights that we are willing to defend.
It's been going on and on because we just plain don't mind our own business. That's our problem.
During the last campaign, I knew what was happening. You know, they mocked me for my foreign policy, and they laughed at my monetary policy. No more.
President Obama has 42% of voter support, and Representative Ron Paul, 41%. Wow!
I see a fantastic movement at the grassroots.
This man brings together people of all races, all socioeconomic backgrounds, all political affiliations, because freedom is truth, and truth is power, and we can live and be free in this country if we believe we can.
What's appealing about him overall is that he is intellectually honest and that he obviously has a lot of integrity.
Ron Paul is at least not a pander, he's sincere.
The reason people are worked up about Ron Paul is because they sense that he's genuine. that he's not a sellout, that he's not taking money to espouse certain positions like 99% of other politicians.
The one guy in the field, agree with him or don't agree with him, who doesn't go out of his way to regurgitate talking points or change what he believes to fit the audience he's in front of.
You served, as you said, 20 years in Congress, but you're not going to take a congressional pension.
Right.
As an obstetrician, you never took Medicare or Medicaid for your patients.
Never.
I'm personally endorsing Ron Paul for President of the United States for 2012. Because a lot of stuff he says makes perfect sense.
Mainstream is moving in the direction that I have been talking about for a long time.
And everything he has said has been truth. And a lot of stuff Obama has said has been lies.
I will promise you this, that if we have not gotten our troops out by the time I am president, it is the first thing I will do. I will get our troops home. We will bring an end to this war. You can take that to the bank.
So does that mean you can tell us today that you will not change the 16-month timetable?
I like Ron Paul. I think he's cut from a different cloth than the rest of those people who are, of course, selling their souls to the corporate interests who back them.
I believe that abortion should be safe and legal in this country.
I will preserve and protect a woman's right to choose, and am devoted and dedicated to honoring my word in that regard.
I will be a pro-life president.
He came to Austin as a Democrat, and then he ran into Karl Rove, and Karl Rove whispered in his ear, he said, look, you're a good-looking guy, your politics are kind of conservative. It was easy for him to make the switch.
There's something else that bothers people. You were leading the charge to push Bill Clinton from office for lying about an affair. At the very same time that you were leading that charge, you were having an affair. Isn't that hypocrisy?
They represent the status quo. And this is what excites so many people now. They're sick of the status quo.
Suddenly, a lot of people who love the country and haven't voted precisely because they feel like it would be an insult to the great history of this country to vote for one or the other criminal, are so excited at the prospect that, wait a minute, maybe the country can be saved after all.
I do think you should value people who speak from the heart and who tell the truth. And you should also value people who honor the vision of your founders and respect the most sublime constitution devised by human intelligence.
We want an America full of principled people, not people who say one thing and do something else.
Ron Paul has been consistent for more than 30 years, and he's been absolutely right about the most important issues facing this country today, which means that when he's elected, we can trust that he'll actually do what he says he's going to do, and that what he does is actually going to work.
This country is in a revolution. They're sick and tired of what they're getting, and I happen to be lucky enough to be part of it. Don't get involved in these wars, just bring our troops home.
There is absolutely never a reason to give up 1 ounce of freedom for the sake of security. It won't work. There is no authority in the Constitution authorizing a central bank, which means there should be no Federal Reserve System. An idea whose time has come cannot be stopped by any army or any government.
As a congressman, Ron Paul voted against every single bailout. He voted against Obamacare. He voted against the Patriot Act. In Congress, Ron Paul has never voted to raise your taxes. He's never taken a government junket or voted for an unbalanced budget or to raise congressional pay or to restrict gun ownership. As our president, Ron Paul will secure our borders. He'll phase out the IRS and end the income tax. He'll end the Fed and bring our troops home.
Have you ever read about the reasons they attacked us?
We were not attacked because of our actions.
They attack us because we've been over there.
They want to kill us because of who we are and what we stand for.
We're there, occupying their land. And if we think that we can do that and not have retaliation, we're kidding ourselves.
That kind of isolationism, sir, is what caused World War II.
It's an extraordinary statement. As someone who lived through the attack of September 11, that we invited the attack.
I believe very sincerely that the CIA is correct when they teach and talk about blowback.
It's become kind of an intelligence term, and it generally applies to an intelligence operation that has a result that you don't anticipate that is unfortunate.
One of the greatest frauds, I think, being perpetrated on the American people is the discrepancy between what its intelligence community collects and what they're told by their political leaders in both parties. And so the American people remain in the dark and really have no idea what this war is about.
There is a direct connection between the conflict in the Middle East today and what happened over 50 years ago.
You can even take it back to when the CIA started intervening in there in 1953, when they overthrew the elected government of Mossadegh, and the reason why he was overthrown was because he was going to nationalize the state oil resources, and that would have affected British and American companies. So it was a classic case of using intelligence resources to have a business outcome, and that overthrow put Iran on a course where eventually it wound up with the Shah, who was authoritarian, and any possibility that the country would develop in a democratic way was basically stifled. And then, of course, we had the Iranian Revolution.
The Ayatollah Khomeini creates a violently anti-American government. In the CIA's after-action report on what they did in 1953 in Iran, they said this would lead to what they called blowback. The U.S. then made a puppet out of one of the CIA's assets in Iraq, Saddam Hussein. Saddam was anti-Iranian and very fearful of the Iranian Revolution and went to war with Iran. The war went on throughout the 1980s and was extremely bloody. As Iraq began to lose the war, President Reagan sent Donald Rumsfeld to tell Saddam the U.S. would covertly supply him with intelligence and weapons. This is why so many Washington insiders have said, "We know Saddam had weapons of mass destruction. We have the receipts."
And this is all pure blowback, where you started with an intelligence operation, and the intelligence operation produced a certain result you thought was okay, the Shah, and then you wind up with a result that's pretty bad.
Saddam remained a U.S. ally right up to his invasion of Kuwait. The U.S. feared he might also invade Saudi Arabia and threaten the largest oil reserves on Earth. So U.S. troops were stationed in Saudi Arabia. Osama bin Laden said he resented that the government of Saudi Arabia was using Americans to defend Saudi Arabia against Iraq. The U.S. began to fear losing its position in Saudi Arabia. With the second largest proven oil reserves being in Iraq, the U.S. now turns on its former ally and prepares the American public for the thought that Saddam must go.
In the years preceding 9/11, Osama bin Laden was a young freedom fighter who promised American officials he'd help them to oust the Soviets from Afghanistan.
The CIA began secretly arming the Mujahideen.
the American Stinger anti-aircraft missile, the weapon most credited with giving the Mujahideen an edge in the war.
Al-Qaeda then became a group that had been empowered by the United States.
Following the defeat of the Soviets and the fall of the Berlin Wall, capitalism was triumphant and communism was gone. But in 1991, when the United States invaded Iraq for the first time, we established military bases in a land revered by Islam.
Every suicide terrorist campaign since 1980 has had as its central objective to compel a democratic state to withdraw combat forces from territory that the terrorists prize.
This war is not against Americans because we're Americans. It's against it's motivated by the activities of our government and its allies in the Muslim world.
Furious at the American government for desecrating their lands, bin Laden and his maniacal associates began plans that would lead to the clash of civilizations that culminated in the tragic events of 9/11.
They don't come here to attack us because we're rich and we're free. They come and they attack us because we're over there.
Mossadegh was freely elected, okay? He served almost 2 years. We went in there and caused the demonstrations that led to his overthrow. Now the Iranians remember that, you know? They remember that.
Yes, there was blowback. The reaction to that was the taking of our hostages.
Most of the American people are totally unaware of what really goes on with our foreign policy and of the way we're irritating people. We're creating a lot of enemies around the world.
Maximum covert operations to block and disrupt the Iranian program, including taking out their scientists, including breaking up their systems, all of it covertly, all of it deniable.
Iran is a country that has been at war with us since 1979.
The senator is wrong on his history. We started it in 1953. The blowback came in 1979. It's been going on and on because we just plain don't mind our own business. That's our problem. We spend $1.5 trillion overseas in wars that we don't need to be in, and we need to cut there, and then put this money back into our economy here.
We would profit from getting out of most of these places. The threats would actually recede because our very presence in many places is unwanted.
He's the only one who's hawkish on defending Americans in America.
A major waterway, the Suez Canal or the Panama Canal, fell into hostile hands. What would you as Commander-in-Chief do, if anything?
I'd look at it and study it and find out if it was a threat to our national security and go to the Congress, find out if they want to declare war, who the enemy is, and take care of it and get it over with. You can solve the problems if we follow our Constitution, go to war, only when we declare the war, go in and win them, and get them over with. You get a declaration of war and you fight it and you win it and get it over with.
Many of the nations that we've been protecting would have to invest the money to protect themselves.
I'm not a leftist. I'm a very conservative person. But I really do think we need to look at our actions. Actions promote reactions.
One of the really appealing things about Ron Paul is that he understands the importance of history. He understands the importance of seeing where you're coming from.
Thomas Jefferson lives. He's Ron Paul.
We, as a group, now have a greater moral responsibility to act than those who live in ignorance. Once you become knowledgeable, you have an obligation to do something about it.
If Americans actually listened to the veterans that they claim to respect so much, their attitude would change. But the thing is, Americans want to honor the veterans in like a very cursory way, you know, putting a yellow sticker on their car, having a little parade or welcome back. But they don't want to honor the veterans by really like listening to what they have to say.
When I came back, you know, after my first appointment in 2007, I was really excited to see this guy in the presidential debates by the name of Ron Paul. he talked about an idea called blowback, which was that our foreign policy has repercussions.
It means a lot to go out and defend our country and make those sacrifices, and it's not something that should be taken lightly.
I support Ron Paul because I believe he's the only candidate with the fortitude to actually stand by the Constitution.
In 1999, my desire to defend the Constitution and fight for my country motivated me to join the United States Army. In 2011, that same desire motivated me to leave the Army. And now that desire motivates me to support the only presidential candidate who will truly defend the Constitution.
When you sign up for the military and you sign the dotted line, you're there to defend America and the Constitution, and Ron Paul is the only person that's been doing that for a while now.
I support Ron Paul because he would take our troops out of harm's way.
We only have those rights that we are willing to defend. And I think Ron Paul understands that.
He has so many of us standing with him.
His calls to bring the troops home should be taken very seriously.
They can no longer use this rhetoric of support the troops, because what the troops are telling you, both in Iraq and those who return, is that they don't want any part of this. They want to come home.
Ron Paul will restore America. He will restore the Constitution, and he will truly support the troops by bringing them home to defend this country.
I've worked at 7 presidential campaigns, and I have never served anyone more incorruptible than Ron Paul. I sleep better at night because he's a principled person who believes in the Constitution.
It really says a lot that the politically aware people in the military, those that are paying attention and engaged in the political process, are supporting someone who advocates an immediate withdrawal.
Our campaign got more money from the troops than all the other candidates put together.
Don't get involved in these wars and just bring our troops home.